always brings me home. I can be out there for a little while, but as soon as I hear those bells and the shells, as well as smelling the smoke from the houses as they're preparing the food, because every house has to be prepared to feed 100 people for 2 days during the ceremonies, and that's 100 people a day. So you have all these small cookware, and then you have your galvanized cookware. And it's just always, every time I pull into the village, I can smell the smoke. Everyone's getting ready for the ceremony, and then I hear the bells and the rattles, and I know it's time. And these are examples of bronzes that I do. I have never studied art. It just kind of naturally fell into place for me. And in this case here, this one's about cultural fortitude, and there's so much behind it, the meaning and everything. But I came up with techniques in creating this piece that when I debuted it, there were a lot of bronzesmiths who were asking me, how did you do this? How did you do that? They wanted to know what techniques. And I'm a very strong advocate against education to some degree, because I feel it limits your ability of creativity and thought process, and I've discovered that in the art world too. Okay. And then this is an example of paintings that I do. This piece was 6 feet by 4 feet, and I actually have, as in the carvings, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different styles of carving that I do that's recognized. Each one of them is individually recognized as my style. In my paintings, I have 5 different styles of paintings. Same thing. People know that those are my works. I recently decided to experiment and do some fused glass pieces, screen printing on glass. And I was at a show, and I was so busy, but there was this woman who was one of the gallery operators out of the museum, and she was just standing back watching all of the action. And when it finally cleared up, she looked at me and she says, you know, every time you come up with something new, it's completely different than anything I've seen before. So it was a real compliment to me. And she placed an order for 12 of those, and I never did them again. Sometimes it's just me wanting to know, because I believe a true artist is one who can take any medium and work it and make it look like he's been doing it forever. Because art is about a message. And sometimes a message is better conveyed in one medium than another. So as an artist, I bounce around a lot, I confuse people, and galleries don't like me, A, for that reason, but also I'm completely independent of galleries. I do not allow anybody to carry my work. And on occasion, like when I owned a house up in Sedona, or just outside of Sedona, when I wanted to do home improvements, I'd take a batch of dolls to the Herd Museum. So they've been the only people who's been allowed to represent me. And when I do take work to them, they don't even look at the material. They just take my invoice and pay me for it, because they know it may be years before they get more work. Okay. This is an example of a painting that I did. I also do like to express my opinions politically, but I try to do it in a very subtle way. And this is actually this is 1/4 of the painting. It's a 4.5 foot mandala using all Hopi symbolism, with the story of the Hopi people, from the types of plants that we do, the types of clouds, as well as the katsina, both in what we refer to as the ant people, who are the representations of our katsinas. But what I did in this piece here is these long-haired katsinas have red and black beards, of which we do have red beard, long hair, as well as the regular long hairs that have the black. And in our stories, in our evolution, we are living in the 4th world now. The demise of the 3rd world was gambling within the kivas. So what I did on this piece is a roulette wheel. So I'm always playing around with my work and making jokes. I have a piece that's hidden that none of you have seen yet, that I'll bring out, and there's some political statements on it also. Okay, and this is the final piece or photograph I have. And what I wanted to do here was talk about this rock. It's called Prophecy Rock, and it's estimated that it was created in around 600 AD, and it's a story of mankind in our world. I've heard the story from many different people, several medicine men as well as other elders on the reservation, and they don't gel. There's different interpretations. I've even seen videos of a particular individual in his youth, and then when he's much older, when he's much more mature, and what I notice is the story changes. Sometimes I think it's a forget, and other times I think that they were young and rebellious, so there was more that they injected into the story. But essentially, this particular petroglyph is about our emergence into the third world and the pathways and our journey of life. And everything about Hopi, I mean, the world of the Puebloan people comes with a lot of ethics and standards of which we have to live by. And one of the most important things is being either a good person or confused, as they say like that. Our favorite reference, our other favorite reference is the other way. And my full name is Gerry Quotskuyva, and the last name Quotskuyva, it means peeping cloud in the sky. So when you look at the horizon, you see all those clouds that are sticking out on the horizon, those are Quotskuyvas. And my interpretation is space cadet. And when I told my family, they were very upset with me about it. And I said, okay, let me ask you, who is this? I went running around the house going like this all over the place, and they all looked at me and they said, Janice. So they understood then what I meant by we are very scattered. And even here in the modern world, I don't live by a clock. I don't live by a calendar. And I was quoted in a magazine one time. They asked me what inspires me, and I explained to them that I basically follow my energy's desire. Whatever I feel like on a daily basis is what I do, and it can shift several times throughout the day. But somehow I manage to keep up with everything that I'm doing. And it's an interesting way of life, but sometimes I have to, you'll see me sit down, it's like, what day am I on? What time is it? In fact, what month are we on? I have no clue, and I truly enjoy this way of life. To me, the life of an artist provides the freedom that we do. Can we go back to the other? You know, the freedom that we as American citizens strive to achieve, and it has a lot to do with sustainability. So on this image here, this represents a man climbing from the third world to the fourth world. And then you see what I'm giving you is a very generic presentation or explanation of this, because there are all these different symbols, and I've heard too many different interpretations, so I kind of like to just keep it to the simple message. Yes, you.
Well, the third world and the fourth world, I'm excited.
I found a book, and it was published in German, and I wanted to buy it. And it was about the first, second, and third worlds, which most Hopis don't even know about. So where he got this information from, I don't know. And I was going to buy it, but then he wanted to trade for a doll. And this was at an antique mall in Santa Fe. Unfortunately, I never followed through with it. And then I developed a really good friendship with a woman from Germany who speaks 9 languages and just basically is based here but travels all over the world for her occupation. And she could have translated it for me, you know, so unfortunately I never really did get to learn about the first, second, and third world. There's not a whole lot. Hopi language was never a written language until the last couple of, let's see, it was probably about 15, 20 years ago. And it occurred here in Tucson. There was a fellow here who had a shop down in Santa Vera Mission, and he was a very important figure in the Hopi world by the name of Emery Sikakaku. And Sikakaku is Sikakakula. Yeah, and he wrote the Hopi Dictionary, so that was the first time the language was actually put into print. And the book sold very well. The first wave almost all went to Hopis because we're having difficulty keeping the language alive too. So that was kind of interesting. there's a whole oxymoron about the world, about our way of doing things. Like that, it was an opportunity to teach the children the language. Some of the more sacred stuff that I speak of, secrecy. There was one man we all turned to for assistance when we were doing some of that stuff. He was Jewish, but he knew everything that needed to be done, and you would walk in and explain to him, I'm here for this. He'd lock his door, because he had a shop, and he'd lock the door and take you into the back room and close the door, and we were in our den, and then he would start talking to you. But with respect to this here, as the man is emerging into the fourth world, you see those two lines that go up in here? These represent, this is the line of purity, of goodness. And as you can see, the line goes up like this and turns to the right. And it continues on the backside. And that represents if you choose a good way of life. And up here, these people here are represented with, they have either one or two lines on it. And they represent the good-hearted and the bad-hearted people, the two-hearted people. And this guy here is one of the good hearts, and this guy here is one of the good hearts. And there's a line right here. So regardless of which path you take, you have the opportunity here to go back to a good way of life. And this guy here is warning these others who I've heard, and I believe this to be the most truthful, represents people of different colors. So you have that choice. But on the second line, we have a reference, and there's a video that was put out called Quotskuyva, and it's about how our world continues this cycle over and over again to where we become corrupt and we get lost. And in the case of this line, it becomes all jaggedy and everything, and that's the chaos they will encounter if they don't become good once again. And as you can see, it comes to an end. So it's a very interesting petroglyph, and there's some young Hopi men out there that take advantage of a lot. They will tell people it's a very sacred rock and go bury things underneath the rock, and then later on they go dig it out and sell it to the next tourist. At any rate,
we're back to you. We're down to about 3 minutes.
Okay, if you guys have any questions, please ask. And also I have some pieces over here if you'd like to take a look at them. But I know that they are pretty quick at shuffling us out, so fire away.
Jerry, take one back. We started a little late, so you have another 5.
Oh, okay. Any questions? Roughly about 600 years ago. Yeah. Okay, I will do that. I have an assistant over here to help me. I have been working on a project for the last 4 years that has gained a lot of recognition worldwide, and I have several museums who are interested in purchasing it. And it's called the Gnarly Root Project. I'll go ahead and do that. And it is actually a very phenomenal piece of root. And I've had the privilege of working on it through grants from the School for Advanced Research in Santa Fe and several other places, including the Ameren Museum, where I spent 3 months working on it. I thought I would just kind of hide it, but this piece is becoming a timepiece in that on the front here, the front is really my political statement, and it's all female casinos. And my expression there was it was during the Trump era when I started this, and my emphasis with regards to that was how we need more women in leadership roles. Then I also included a little insertion where the clowns represent the cycle of life of man. And we have one clown. What I did is I had the most important figures on the top, and then they kind of make this up down below. So what I did was I have the important figures up top, but this one clown that goes through the life cycle of man, there's a period where he becomes corrupt, and his ego is so strong that he starts getting himself into trouble. So what I did is this clown here climbed to the highest point. Now he's trying to figure out how to get himself out of his mess. He happens to have orange hair. And then here, this piece here is about, in our prayers also, we pray for the goodness of all mankind, and we carry the burdens of the world upon us. So that's what this is all going to become, is the arm of the casino. But so the front is all matriarchal, and I represent that in all the different casinos, starting off with the deer, which when I started this piece, it was at the School for Advanced Research, and I was walking to the studio from the house that I was living in, a deer crossed my path. So that started the whole thing, and on here are different insertions that was occurring to me at the moment also. And then what I did is I had all the female casinos, but then I also did human figures, because they play such an important role, especially during the ceremonies. There's so many responsibilities that the women undertake in taking care of the men, taking care of all the family and everything like that, and they do it gracefully. You never see people getting upset or angry or anything like that. So I wanted to acknowledge them, and in the case of the grandmother, her body is not a body but the root of the stump of a tree to represent the ancestral side. So on this side, it's all female. Then on the back, what I'm doing are dioramas of the men in traditional timing. I have here a coal gatherer, a wood gatherer. There's going to be men carved into these little squares that are singing to the clouds as we do in our ceremonial processes. This is the sun face. He's the father of all mankind. We all consider him that. And then here, what I'm going to be doing are dioramas of farmers and hunters and things of that nature. So I'm trying to cover all of that. And then over here, I have a weaver, because the men are weavers in Hopi and the women are the potters. And then right here on the side, this was another example of following what's happening at the time. I'm working on a priest down here who's sitting inside of a little alcove. And this here was a big bubble, and I did not know what I was going to do with it. And I was staying up in a dome house where the first floor was underground. So during that time I was sleeping underground, and I had some really interesting experiences, including a snake hanging out of the ceiling one day. And I was sitting there, these things falling on me, and when I looked up, he was just sitting there looking at me. But, and a comet came through, and it dawned on me, a star casino, because they pick up our messages and carry them to the universe. So I started him here, and his tail's going to continue to go up like this, where it's coming down and flowing back. So this is the major project I'm working on at the moment that has received a lot of recognition worldwide. There's actually a new book coming out in September in which there's a whole chapter just about this book. Okay, any more questions?
What kind of
These are roots from cottonwood trees. You know, as it goes, a tree's roots mirror the tree. And cottonwood trees are very big trees and very wide, so they umbrella out like that. And it's our purpose as carvers to bring them back to life. And they're very aggressive in that they drink 500 gallons of water a day, these trees. And we're losing them to the tamarind that's taking over the rivers and everything.
I've heard it said that cottonwood trees got struck by lightning hold particular power for casinos. Is that accurate?
I've never heard that one, but I do know when it comes to crystals, they have a particular energy that's different. See, most indigenous nations do use crystals in a lot of their ceremonial stuff. And I do have a couple of crystals that were struck by lightning. I also have some that have water encased within them. And it's fun because they have little paths, and I'll sit there and play with them and move it around inside. But I guess we are done with Q&A, so I would like to thank the Friends of Western Art.